So when you think about internship strategy, I think the starting point for every student should be building a strategy on how to identify an area of interest.
So many other practice areas. You have a funds practice, you can be a PE/VC lawyer, you can do mergers and acquisitions for listed entities.
General corporate, TMT, there's a lot.
Yes, there's a lot. So, because the problem with that approach is that someone looking at your CV.
The way I would look at it is any skills that are lacking today at an internship that students have done should be looked at as an opportunity to take that feedback and work before that.
It's difficult for you to piece in the entire puzzle. And this is where our advice of seeing if you can do an online internship comes in. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Legally Wired. This is going to be a very exciting and useful episode for everyone at law school. We're going to talk about internships over a two-part series. In our first part, we will visit how students at law school can strategize their internships. So Shivani, to begin our discussion today, how do you think students must think about strategizing their internships?
So, exciting topic, and we're really excited to be discussing this as our episode 3. So when you think about internship strategy, I think the starting point for every student should be building a strategy on how to identify an area of interest and how do they narrow down to the area of interest. That's a big part of forming an internship strategy. So that's where I would begin. So if you look at how we were at law school and we were at first year, and if you also talk to kids who are at the early years of law school, they all have, and even we had, like a preconceived notion of what it was to be a lawyer. We had an inkling that I think I would want to be in litigation, I want to be a criminal lawyer, I want to be a corporate lawyer. And those ideas were formed because of something that we have seen growing up. And it could be from TV shows, it could be from books that we've read, or generally what we've seen on the news. But now that you are at law school, you should definitely test your hypotheses and see if what you've identified as an area of interest is right. And if there is other fields that you've not thought of before coming to law school, but you're exposed to a lot of other fields, you should definitely try to see if there is a better fit in terms of what you would be interested in.
Obviously, there are multiple areas of practice within the fields of litigation and corporate, and it's quite likely that somebody in their early years of law school would not know all of their practice areas, all of these practice areas. For example, within the litigation sphere, you can specialize as a commercial litigator, you can specialize as a criminal lawyer, you can specialize as a lawyer who only works on constitutional matters, you can be a maritime lawyer. You can also go into the field of arbitration, which is also another form of litigation. And within corporate, you have so many other practice areas. You have a funds practice, you can be a PE/VC lawyer, you can do mergers and acquisitions for listed entities.
General corporate, TMT, there's a lot.
Yes, there's a lot. So the question that anybody watching this video would have, who is in law school obviously, is how do they form an interest for a practice area early on in their during their time at law school, because obviously they don't have exposure to all of these areas in the form of subjects. And how soon should they develop this interest?
Well, that's how you look at your internship opportunities at law school, right? You have these 10 compulsory internships, which would mean that you have 4 in the very first 2 years. Now, the way even the curriculum at law school is designed is you're not exposed to a lot of actual legal subjects which have depth, like constitutional law, criminal law, until your 3rd, 4th and 5th year. So now as first year students, if you have to plan your internship because you're not naturally exposed to it as part of your curriculum, then they need to kind of take the effort to discover what all is available in terms of opportunities. So this could be in terms of read the newspaper, right? And then you would be exposed to a lot of different areas of law that is relevant in the news today, and you will see where lawyers are relevant. And if you identify an area, like for example, right now what's trending on the news is this entire dispute that's going on in the space of aviation because of the unfortunate flight crash that occurred. So that there is a mix of insurance law over there, aviation law, commercial liability and corporate liability in terms of who's liable for that accident. So when you're reading this, instead of just reading it as a piece of news that you just take home, law students should be thinking about, well, these are all different areas of law that are being explored over here, and go deeper and see if this is something that interests you. And if it does, then that's the base for figuring out, that's a base direction for figuring out where you should be interning at.
So I think that this is a road that somebody who is a voracious reader only will can take advantage of. It goes more than peripheral reading. It requires a deeper reading of these newspaper items and then a subsequent investigation to fully understand the legal implications, right? And that requires interest. And if you're a very curious person, you would be able to find something that interests you early on. Another way to approach this, in my view, would be to watch a lot of these podcasts on YouTube, and it doesn't have to be legal podcasts. You can watch business podcasts for different business areas, right? You have one for mining. I remember the last time on Nikhil Kamath's show, the one that's fresh in my mind was the restaurant business. And there was one for batteries, and there's so many on AI. And you can ask yourself which business is something that you are interested in, and you can approach that business from a legal perspective, because businesses don't generally take just a commercial view. There's also, for example, under AI, for AI law, you need to have a good understanding of data protection laws. You need to have a good understanding of technology laws in general, and also a good amount of, copyright law
IP.
too, IP in general. So, and then you can say, okay, if I want to go this direction, then I need a base understanding of these areas. Which are the internships where I'm likely to get an exposure on these matters?
That's right. But to the earlier point that you made, that you need to be a voracious reader to have this attitude of investigating when you're reading the news. Well, to everyone that's watching this, like, welcome to the legal profession. One way or the other, you cannot avoid reading volume. You will have to do that. Even if you're not doing it voluntarily, once you land a job, that's going to be a part of your day-to-day activity. So that is not a hurdle that you should think of overcoming and omitting entirely. You will have to kind of pick up the ability to read volume.
Yeah, and also to somebody who's watching this, look at it this way. You are reading interesting news. You're not reading for a contest. You're reading to consume and to
Form
understand.
your career.
Yes. So I think more reading only takes you towards identifying that interest area. And it's based on our experience. The only way you can enjoy the practice of law is to finding an area of interest early on, sticking to it, building some amount of expertise, going into practice, building more expertise, and then you become a leader in that field probably 10-15 years from law school.
I agree. I know like a few people from my batch who made the decision very early on without exploring the different areas of law about what they wanted to do. And internships, you will still be able to get by. It's ultimately 1 month in a semester, right? But when it actually gets converted into a job, they were a bit disillusioned. So you shouldn't be in a position to be you should avoid being in that position where you've already graduated, you're at your first job, and then you realize that you've not examined this question in depth on what is my area of interest. So that would be an unfortunate place to be at, and our discussion around this is to avoid that situation. So one more way that I can think of in terms of how do you use your law school resources to answer this question for yourself, use your library. All law school libraries are divided I'm hoping all law school libraries are divided into different subject areas. Pick up a random book that interests you. You can just go by, you can judge a cover to just pick it up and see if there are topics in it that interest you. I'm not suggesting that you read cover to cover and then discover an area of interest.
Yeah, so this advice to find a practice area that you are interested early on and a little inorganically, because you have to go beyond law school curriculum to find this interest, and that's why I say inorganically, works for somebody who's in their early years of law school. For people who are in their later years of law school and have realized that their internships till date don't make much sense, or you are not able to discern a pattern from the internships that you've done, now would be a good time to look at that list and honestly ask yourself the question: which internships were the worst internships for you? Which internships told you that you clearly didn't enjoy it? And now find new areas that you want to take a chance, because obviously the advantage for you is you would have had more exposure. So you can take a gamble on another practice area that you might have some interest, and here is where you will have to do an extra layer of learning some things about that practice area on your own and reaching out to people on LinkedIn and try to get those test internships at smaller places and work your way up the ladder.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So you have, because you have just 10 internships, it's possible that there are people who find multiple areas of interest in year one and year two, but they don't know how to explore it over the duration of 4 internships. That is a problem that I personally had at law school, and I was in the batch of 2011 to 2016. So online internships and online jobs in general were not a thing. So how, with the changing climate in terms of how people are able to work remotely, do you see opportunities for people interning more than 10 times over their 5-year course?
Thanks to the COVID years, law firms and also other organizations have discovered that you can work remotely. The advantage of this for students at law schools is they can write to organizations and they can offer to work remotely. I know that there are a good number that don't do this, but there are a good number who are open to doing this. So it's all about wanting to do it. If you want to intern during your semester, you can do it from an online mode. I know a lot of people who reach out to me to see if they can intern online for the duration of the semester. And
we've worked with some of them at Pixis. We've had distant interns when we required them. Yeah, so it's worked pretty well for a couple of distant interns that we've had at Pixis.
True that.
And another aspect, we are also advocating that don't look at internships as something that you need to show certificates for. No one really cares about the certificates, and you need it at law school to prove that you've finished 10 as part of your curriculum. So if you are really interested in actually exploring an area of law and you're not able to get an organization to work at, another interesting way that you can look at it is to reach out to professionals who are doing fairly well in these areas of law that you've identified. Reach out to them and ask them if there is a way that they can, if you can intern with them for a while for the personal work that they are doing.
So I think this is a good entry point to speak about what an internship is not. An internship should be used as a tool to find out an interest in a practice area and then specialize in that area, and then in your final years identify the best places to work at in those practice areas and attempt to get a job. You shouldn't use an internship as an opportunity to collect certificates from the best organizations in the country and then showcase them on your CV, because the problem with that approach is that someone looking at your CV will not be able to see a pattern, will not be able to see if there is a genuine interest in a practice area, and you will not be able to effectively use your CV to tell a story on your interest area, and that becomes challenging to get a job at an organization of your choice, and then you fall in that pit of being forced to make a decision of entering into a firm and working in a practice area that you just might not have interest in, and then you may start contemplating quitting law. The practice of law is a very enjoyable experience provided you find the right practice area for yourself.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder. So we are basically sharing our philosophy of what an internship experience should be and how do you strategize internships at law school. But this is quite different from what law schools advocate for their students, right? Because at least when I was studying, the general advice that was given to all first years was that in your first year, do an NGO internship, right? And I don't know what the philosophy behind that is and why that's advised. What are your thoughts on that? Like, should students be taking that path?
I want to qualify this as my view, and it shouldn't be a universal truth. If you think about it logically, how does interning at an NGO help you if you've determined that you have no interest in the field of human rights, you have no interest in the field of public service? These are the areas of life where to be effective, you need to have a serious passion, and then only you should do it. If you don't have that level of passion and that level of commitment naturally, then you shouldn't be there. Forcing yourself to do an internship in these spaces, just because you've had advice that in the first year you should do an internship in NGO, is a waste of time. You don't show any interest, and it also results in somebody more deserving losing out on an opportunity. So you shouldn't do it. You should. I know that in the first year it's difficult to identify a couple of areas of practice, but you can definitely eliminate on personality types certain areas. Like some people just know upfront that an NGO or a human rights organization is not for them, then that's fine. That should be acceptable. For some people, they may have stage fright. They may not be good at public speaking, and they never see themselves as a litigator. Then they shouldn't try litigation. I think that you need to use your internships wisely to discover interests in practice area, not ticking the box and doing one NGO internship in your first semester, one high court internship in your second semester, one law firm internship and a third semester, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think the reason that this came about, this advice seems to be long-standing in the law school community, is because at some point this must have been at a time when the areas of practice in law are not as diverse as it is today. And this is a philosophy where people are advising that you've got to try different things. Yes, you've got to try different things, but you have 10 chances to do that. So if you're able to early on establish that I already have 5 areas of interest, which is clearly one of them is not working at a NGO, then sit out of that. It's not a mandatory thing that you need to be doing. Right. So the first part of our strategy that we are recommending for internships is how to discover an area of law, how do you explore different areas, and how do you narrow down and what you should be doing in the first and second year. So what is another aspect of the strategy for internships that you would recommend?
Yeah. So you use these internships. Now you've identified a practice area that interests to you in theory. You still don't know if it actually interests you. So you get an internship in that practice area with a consultant or a solo practitioner, because the threshold to getting accepted at those internships is a lot lower than in relation to getting accepted at a firm where so many people are applying. If it's a more niche practice area, all the better. It means that there are not many other competitive applicants who are applying for that internship. So go ahead, write to them, and then you will likely to get an internship. Now at that internship, you need to be solving the problems that are routine for that practice area, that clients generally come for that practice area. And here is where you get a flare of interest. I will concede that you might not be able to recognize what the ordinary course problems are for that practice area if you intern only for a month, because the practice at a law firm or with any legal practitioner for a short-term intern is that they give you ad hoc tasks. So it's difficult for you to piece in the entire puzzle. And this is where our advice of seeing if you can do an online internship comes in. So you can try and negotiate with some of these solo lawyers that for the time that you can work with them physically, you will do that. And then when you cannot do that, you will go back to your law school and continue to work with them on an online mode where you help them with routine day-to-day tasks that have to be completed. So what that does for you is that you develop a relationship with the supervisor in the sense that they start trusting you with bigger matters, and you get a flair of the kind of problems that come over there to that office. And then this helps you make a insightful decision whether this practice area really inspires you. Is this something that you see yourself doing for the rest of your life, or do you want to go to another practice area and see if an interest lies there?
Okay, so what about so you have an intern who has explored a practice area after discovering an area of interest, and they quite like what they're seeing at work. They like the problems that the internship that they've done is trying to solve, but they don't think they're there yet in terms of skills. They might like the area of law, but they don't have the skills today to excel at it, and they've not really gotten great feedback at the internship that they have done. So how would you look at this problem, and how would you think about it? That does this mean that you don't have the skills, so you need to shift your area of interest and explore a different practice area, or would you advise them to stick to it?
If you don't have skills because you didn't put in the work, that is an other type of problem, and we won't go into it because it's a separate topic in itself, and I don't think it even relates to law. But if you had interest and if you have genuinely put in efforts, but the results are not there, that's completely fine. It takes time to learn anything well. It's not something that comes on day one. So you have to ask yourself honestly what the lacking was. Was it because you didn't know how to conduct research, or was it because you were poor at writing or presentation? What was the real reason for failure? And then you spend time learning that. There are so many ways to upskill yourself. There's so many alternate educational avenues, and this is how you use them. You use them to upskill on areas that you've discovered that you're not good at. If it's writing, then it's okay to look on the internet, find a writing program that could help you, and then you take that and you learn that skill, and eventually you will get better. And I will say this on a limb, from my life experience, whenever there is intent to do something and you keep at it, you will eventually get to the destination.
Right, and the skills that are essentially required across practice areas of law are ultimately the communication package. We spoke about it at length in our previous episode. And your real skills as a lawyer in terms of research and analysis, right? No matter which area of practice that you go, these skills will be required, maybe in varying degrees. Like if you are in litigation, yes, public speaking becomes a very important part of your skill set, but not so much if you are, say, part of some policy work, or even if you are a corporate lawyer. Public speaking is not really that top on the priority of things that you absolutely need to have. So the way I would look at it is any skills that are lacking today at an internship that students have done should be looked at as an opportunity to take that feedback and work before their next internship. And that's also a very important part of your internship strategy, is also how do you prepare to move to the next level of internships, right? You had a starter internship, you recognized your area of interest. Now, how do you get to a better organization that where you can explore this area further and also build your CV where you're showing interest in that direction, is that you need to build on the skills that you've identified at this first internship.
And to add on to that, if you have come to the conclusion that a certain practice area does interest you, and if you've done reasonably well at an internship for that practice area, then the next stepping stone is to go to a slightly bigger organization which does the same type of work. So you get more opportunities there to explore diverse matters and also see how clients are thinking about this. If you do well at your first internship, it is likely that your supervisor, who may be a mentor, can recommend and can push you to these other organizations. What also helps is, now that you've discovered interest, you've done well in that particular internship, is to come back to campus and write articles, write content on the problems within this particular practice area and show a genuine interest. You can publish them on so many platforms. You can publish them on LinkedIn, you can publish them on Substack, and you can continue to write these pieces. So when you take this whole content approach, it is a useful way to network with other leaders in the industry for the same practice area, and that can be the source of your second internship.
Right, yeah, think about it, right? If you've invested the time to write on your area of interest and then you're reaching out to someone on LinkedIn who's in this area of practice, it's going to work pretty well for you, because they're able to see that you've not randomly messaged them, you have intentionality in this area and you've invested some time in this, so they're going to take you more seriously. Ultimately, it's all about how do you increase your chances of getting these opportunities.
Correct. And this approach, it helps you create a definitive pattern in your CV. So when you go to the organization which is your dream organization, for example, let's say you found an interest in competition law and you worked your way from starter organizations, you worked in some research centers on competition law, and then went to a place like Reliance where competition law is important, and then you went to a smaller firm that does, a boutique law firm that does competition law matters. I can't think of a boutique law firm's name, but you go there, and then eventually you apply to a SAM, CAM, a KCO for a competition law internship. They're definitely going to consider you. And in fact, if they have an interview for that intern position at that time, you're likely to do very well because you've had that experience, you've produced content. And I would say that your chance of getting a job in that field post law school is at least at an 8 on 10.
Right. I completely agree with you. And that brings me to the next question that I have on internship strategy. How do law students today strategize their internships over 5 years between a tier one law firm versus smaller law firms or independent practitioners? So, how do they spread that across?
I think if you're somebody who has no influence in the industry, you don't have relatives, you're truly a first gen, and you're writing to people on LinkedIn for an internship, then it shows automatically on your CV. Also, assuming that your school has no networks and they tell you upfront that you're pretty much on your own. So, and that shows in your CV, right? You have to work your way up. And this is not to say that getting any internship is easy, but in relation to applying at a tier one law firm early on, it's easier to get an internship with somebody who's a solo practitioner, or they have a 2 or 3 member law firm. It's easier. They're always looking for interns, and they also understand that you're writing to them because you've expressed some level of interest, not displayed interest, expressed interest, and they are happy to take interns as long as they don't have to pay them. And which should work well in your favor. So when you go there, you do well, or you at least you make an attempt to genuinely do well, then they will help you, they will mentor you. It's likely that they will mentor you, and you can write to them and ask them where you think you have to go next. And then that can be a tier 3 firm if it's in the law firm, or it can be a small startup company that requires that level of expertise. You've seen the legal head who has a lot of experience, so you can write and probably get an internship there. Then you use that level to work your way up to a tier 2. And then when you apply to a tier 1 law firm, they look at your CV and they see the pattern. They see that you've stuck to one practice area. You've created this narrative hopefully by writing content for that practice area. You've published it, and you've also worked at a tier 2 place for some time. And now you're ready to come over there. They're going to be excited to have you. And because of that experience that you show, all the tasks that are important, or that they think that they want to test you on expertise, they're going to come to you because they know that you have some amount of experience in that area.
Yeah, but even for the kids who have these connections, or who are able to get an internship at a tier 1 law firm in year 1, year 2, I would advise against it, because tier 1 internships are the place that you want to be at in your 4th year, 5th year.
Correct. They're audition internships. That's where you're auditioning for your final job.
Exactly. If you're going to explore an area of interest at tier 1, you will not get the opportunity to fail, and you will not get the opportunity to learn and grow from that. You've already made an impression.
Yeah, they have very less patience for failure even at an internship level. That is not to say that they expect perfection, but they have a preconceived idea of how much imperfection is permissible.
Right, they're expecting you to stand out because you are at a tier 1 place, right? You have to be a tier 1 intern for you to perform at that place. So rather you build up your skills, you build up your area of interest, have some research already done into that, and then walk into a tier 1 law firm as a shot of converting that into a callback internship if you're in your 4th year, or to convert that into a PPO if you're in the 5th year.
In this sort of planning, what the internships do is that it just doesn't prepare you to get a job, it also prepares you for the job.
Right.
Because you spent years developing the basics for that practice area. So and when you go to a law firm to work, you are going to build up not from zero. It might not be 5, but it's definitely not 0. So with that base, it only sets you up for tremendous amount of success. And I say this for any practice area. Even if you want to be a human rights lawyer, then you have to plan it better, right? You might want to go to Harvard for human rights LLM, or you want to go to I think Geneva has a very prestigious human rights program, LLM. So all these, so you need to plan way ahead of time to get there, because getting there will automatically open doors somewhere else, maybe at the UN level, and that's where you want to go. So it's very important for serious candidates at law school to think about these things in a long-term manner.
Yeah, so now what about, not all jobs are available for freshers, right? If you want to work in something highly specialized, like you want to be in the public policy team of Google. They do hire lawyers, but they don't hire freshers. But you've identified that as an area of interest. So how does a law student that's looking at that, and that seems extremely exciting for them, but there is no avenue that they can directly see, there's no ladder that they can see that as a fresher they're getting into these roles. So how do they then strategize their career? This bit is not about just strategizing internships. You're strategizing your career to be able to land those jobs, and that strategy can start right from law school if you've identified it early on. So how do you think through getting to these jobs?
Thank you for this question. I was hoping to answer this question. I want to preface my answer by saying that anybody in any law school in this country can get their dream job of their choice. If you are in a law school today, and if you have this aspiration of working in Google, McKinsey,
Meta,
or Coke, you can get that job. It's very simple. It's a long-term plan, of course, but you need to sit and you need to strategize what are the fields of law that will get you to those organizations. In the public policy example, you need to see as a lawyer how you can work in public policy. A useful resource to understand all of this is LinkedIn. Go and look for public policy experts who work in Google today, and you will see
follow their career path.
Yeah, you will see how they started out. You will see where they interned, where they went to college for their masters, and how they got their jobs. And that's a pathway upfront that you get, and you have to work on that same stream. So, for example, let's say that to get to a place like Google, you should have gone to a school like Harvard, or you should have gone and done a public policy program. So, and that's how it is, right? Because that's how these organizations probably apply. Maybe not Google, but there are a lot of these top organizations that hire from some feeder places. So your first step is to get to that feeder place. It can be either a very prestigious university in a prestigious program, right? Or it can be another, second level organization.
Yeah, I also see a longer career path, right? Not everyone might have the resources to get into a Harvard tomorrow after identifying that this is their dream job. Yes, there are these feeder schools where Google will probably hire from. But now if you have like a similar role in India, even the Google public policy team has opportunities for the India region. So if you are able to identify other candidates, other professionals in this field that are there in this team, and you observe their career, they might have taken a longer path because they didn't go for their masters to one of these prestigious universities. So they would have taken a longer path. They would have worked in several fields. And now Google is in a regulated space in a sense because they do have responsibility towards general public, and they do influence public opinion quite a bit. So you would see that there are people who have done work in these regulated areas like technology law, like data privacy is a big part of it. So you have to join these puzzles that will come together as a profile that will be relevant for Google maybe 6 years down the line after you graduate from law school.
And you can also write to them. In fact, if you write to them early on in your career, especially when you're still in law school and doing internships, you come off as somebody who's genuine, and you come off as somebody who really wants to make it in the same way that that person has made it, and they're likely to help you a lot more. So
you mean write to these professionals?
Yes, write to them on LinkedIn. Get their emails. Ask them if you could help them in any manner. You just mirror their strategy in getting those roles, and you will get there. You will eventually get there. All of this requires meticulous planning, and the internships is a small part of that long-term strategy. And therefore, you need to identify that practice area or interest upfront so that you can get there. A small note, what do 3-year students do? They don't have 10 internships, they have 6 internships.
So 3-year students, they are walking into law school because they've already done a graduate degree in some other field, and there's a reason why they changed direction, or maybe they're adding on to what they've done in their undergrad with a law degree. So there is this assumption that they already have a sense of direction, and if they don't, then they really need to think about these questions a little more deeply when they're joining a 3-year program. And so for example, if you already had an undergrad degree in BCom or in tax or something, then that's a direction that you know. that you will be working as a tax lawyer somewhere or a commercial in some commercial space, right? So that's a general direction that 3 year law school students should have while walking into law school.
If you don't have that direction, I would say write a statement of purpose. You would do that if you were applying to go to grad school for law in the US, and they in fact accept students based on how strong your statement of purpose is. While an Indian law school doesn't expect a statement of purpose, you can write one for yourself, and that will help you identify the purpose of going law school and maybe even discover the practice area that you want to be in. Unfortunately for 3 year students, the expectation is when you come into law school, you already have some idea of the field that you want to go into. Like for somebody who's coming from a who's done BCom, right? It's easy for them to get into corporate. It's easy for them to get into tax law because they have the basics already ready. For somebody who's coming from literature, English, or history, they really have to do the statement of purpose exercise and ask them the purpose of getting into law school and what they hope to get from there. They don't have too many chances to experiment and find an area of interest. They have to be ready to fly right from internship 1.
Yeah, I agree. So Mitra, then what would you say are the broad points that we would put under a strategy for a good internship program for law school students?
Watch a lot of YouTube videos for different to get a sense of things that you are interested in. When I say watch a lot of YouTube videos, I don't mean any videos. I meant to say podcasts like this, industry relevant
videos,
and get a sense of the general area that you are interested in. Read a lot of newspapers, specifically Mint. If you read the Mint, you will get a sense of the different roles lawyers play in different practice areas. Make a list of 5 or 10 practice areas that you may be interested in or you think you may be interested in. We understand that you may not have in-depth expertise at this juncture, and then attempt to get internships at least in 2 of your practice areas. If you find something interesting, start funneling down. Find organizations that are relatively easy to get into earlier, build great relationships there, and gradually progress to bigger organizations. And in your final year, you must be aiming to get into an organization where you want to work or where you can impress, you can audition well and get a first job. That should be a strategy.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So in this part of the video on internships, we've covered how to strategize them. There's a part 2 that we're going to be doing soon, which will cover how to actually get these internships, different ways to apply for them, and also what are the things that you need to achieve at these internships to get it converted into a potential job. So yeah, see you next week.
Yeah, look forward to our second part. Thank you.